This video is less about a particular weapon, it's more about showing different weapons and how the fights changed as our opponents adapted. So let us start from the staff. Some of those clips are old, but I selected those where the patches did not invalidate the concepts. Please look at the way I am playing particular weapon sets, because that's the point of the video. So the staff is one of my favorite weapons. It's mostly a party weapon really. A close range weapon where opponents need to be put together by someone else and you are able to support or move away from the harm. Combining staff and shield gives you amazing survivability really, because you can either staff 2 away from the harm or you can approach your opponents using shield 4. A great disadvantage of sword, shield and staff is kiting. Also, unless you go Condi Shatter, you are not actually able to deal enough damage to be able to kill someone tanky who knows what they are doing. But between Shield 5 and Chaos Storm you have incredible disruption potential. So although aged, this is still a very potent party weapon, even if you cheer when the phantasm hits. This part in fight is something you will often encounter. Staff has very long cooldowns, and here I have managed to be on staff trying to stop 2 opponents from rezzing. 1-1-1 sucks. Phantasm will fail. Unavailable Chaos Storm. Between this and the fact that Sword Shield requires pursuing your opponent, everything able to kite should be able to defeat you when you are using Sword, Shield and Staff on power glassy build. A new scepter, Power Scepter, might be able to take the place of Sword, but this is something to still consider. I haven't checked that yet. And this is basically why, when I am using Sword, Shield and Staff, I'm using some kind of offensive utilities. The fact you want to be in melee most of the time means that Dragon Hunters with traps, Reapers and sustain survival builds should be able to kill you. So in this video you can see something like this. Our opponents are more of glassy nature. I am grouping them together using Gw2, while Mardis is killing them with thief damage. My role here is to 1. Confuse them, 2. Be a support for Mardis. I am the disruptor, he is the killer. So a glassy partner is something very useful if you are doing this configuration. Take the fire on yourself using staff and shield and let your partner kill opponents. On staff shield, just no, you will not be the MVP of the battlefield in terms of damage. As we had a phase when every rober played the Reaper and where sustain was king, I have swapped staff to Greatsword. As a weapon, Greatsword is opposite to staff. Staff is a defensive mobility tool, where Greatsword has low general damage but incredible burst damage. When you play staff, you are able to kite and stay in melee. With Greatsword, you are an artillery. This is why I supplement Greatsword with defensive utilities or Signet of Domination for stun. Greatsword has one advantage over staff. You can make better videos. I mean, 1, you stay behind so you can see more. 2, the camera is less jerky. So yeah, that's something one should consider. This is one of my early Greatsword clips, so I don't feel the weapon yet. And my personality doesn't really allow me to stay in artillery range. I should be in melee trying to drink the blood of my opponents or something. So it's easier to find better Greatsword players than me. However, combining Sword, Shield and Greatsword means you are able to select your fights, use Decoy to disengage, use Shield to disengage, and when opponents go after you, your friends should be able to slay them. So right, with staff I was in the middle of the fray, with Greatsword I am around the fray. This is a full band build because I've got very high long range, medium range and short range, with disruption coming from Greatsword 5 and Shield 5. Disadvantages? Well, Greatsword has no defenses. Mesmers aren't very fast, so Portal is a very good tool which supplements the Greatsword. Greatsword is a burst weapon, which means you make impulse damage and you should do it when it counts, because the sustained over time damage from Greatsword is completely atrocious. Swapping Gravity Well to Mass Invisibility means I've got even more defenses and I can play even more aggressively, which also means that I am able to shield my friends, because enemies can't focus fire properly. Party stealth is insanely strong. And Portal allows me to disengage and to come from the other side. This means I can go Glacier and I can mitigate one of the greatest disadvantages of Greatsword. As an extra benefit, I can evacuate an ally. So if you're in a coordinated roaming party, using Portal and Mass Invisibility might be something worthy considering, especially for you. So this Greatsword 5 and Shield 5 is an example of total disruption, because enemies were not able to actually res their allies. And you know, blink, decoy, and I can return to the fray. Glassy Mesmers can't stomp. In terms of solo fighting, burst it before it outsustains you. Catch them on Greatsword when they are in close range, and use Sword Shield when you have to actually defend yourself. Blink away to change to the Greatsword, use decoy to lose position. Every time of Dragon Hunter traps or everything will be able to actually put a dent in your perfect plan. There are far better Mesmers than me which are able to use Greatsword, and although this fight might not be the most spectacular one, it shows my way of thinking how the Greatsword works in terms of being a weapon. That is 1 versus 1 weapon. Now this fight is pretty interesting because it is a survival Condi Ranger and the terrain is completely unsuited to Greatsword. As you can see, I got totally baited into it. I had no idea what I am actually facing, and my opponent was able to think tactically using the terrain and everything. Sword Shield is a sustained weapon set. It doesn't have a single burst skill in it. The closest to the burst is Sword 2, which is a defensive skill. Greatsword is a burst weapon, which has no sustain and especially is useless in short range. This particular type of opponent in this particular type of terrain should be able to defeat me. That is, if I stay there and decide to trade hits. So I had to evacuate from that place and face the most dangerous opponent in Gw2, Obstructed Message. And this leads towards the traits. The single strongest trait for a Greatsword is Chrono Phantasma. The second strongest is Persistence of Memory, so Domination and Illusion. Greatsword is AoE damage, basically, using the Berserkers, and the fact that phantasms and clones appear at opponent's location, so you can shatter. Note that I was able to use terrain against him. I put pressure and I don't go to him. Greatsword, you are far away. In this clip I am Berserker with Scholar runes. Glassiest possible. With the new patch, ANET gave us a new old weapon, Power Scepter. This weapon is very difficult to assess. It doesn't have the range of a Greatsword. It is definitely not a burst weapon. To work properly it requires, absolutely requires, traiting. But this weapon fits me like a glove. Assuming it's traded, it is an illusion line, which means you've got clone reduction and scepter cooldown reduction, which gives you a block, torment block, on 5 seconds cooldown. Fast auto attack with third hit which puts clone on your enemy position. Scepter 3 dealing decent damage. And you can load a Phantasm in second weapon. Note how this is able to deal a lot of damage and has some sustain. Because enemies move, it deals much more damage than sword does, because with sword you need to run and do 1-1-1. With this you don't run towards opponents. Basically, if I was on Staff Sword Shield, I would not be able to defeat this thief like ever. He disengages, Illusionary Warlock would never hit him, he has some defenses, and overall sustain. If I was on Greatsword Sword Shield, I would have to hope for bursting this one. As he is the one to select the moment he attacks, because of Dagger Pistol, it would simply be extremely difficult, he would have to make a mistake. Here, every time I push him away, I block with Scepter 2, I cast a Duelist, and in the end, at one push I am able to burst him down. Is Scepter perfect? Not really, no. Greatsword can pierce through blocks. Although Scepter allows us to load any offhand we want to, for example I load Pistol right now, Scepter Pistol is vulnerable to kiting. Even with defensive configuration like Well of Precognition and Decoy, something like this Guardian with very high damage and very high sustain, which could be bursted, is able to defeat me. Scepter X plus Sword Shield is basically a brawler. Perhaps I should try Scepter Sword with some defensive trinkets for less utility and much more damaging phantasms, but for now I haven't yet. Anyway, note I am not able to actually kill this Guardian, even if I have enough damage, because he can outsustain me and I do not have the sustain enough to be able to survive his hits. Also, all my skills are channels. This means that Pulmonary Impact from Thief's Interruption will deal me enormous damage. Tested yesterday, Fengstal But enough of the solo play, because it's less interesting. Let's see the party situation. On my side, Ling, the ranger, not druid. On the same dragon hunter and the chronomancer. Unblockable dragon hunter traps. I never remember about unblockability. They focus Ling, which is actually a mistake because it results with enemy dragon hunter getting downed. Enemy chronomancer gets his partymate up, but I focus him, and this is where my build shines. It's an assassin. Scepter 3 and Duelist deals enormous damage. Where Greatsword has burst and area damage, Scepter has single target damage, at cost of channeling. I thought Well of Precognition can block the trap, but the trap is unblockable, so I killed us. Not that it matters, because 2 more people came. Another example, we get attacked from mass invisibility by the party of 3. Ronings is a Condi Chronomancer, I am a Power Chronomancer. They also have Stealth Gyro, because there's never enough stealth, and they properly focus me in the beginning. Sword Shield is the defensive configuration here. Now, with Staff, you use Staff as a defensive weapon set, so your main is Sword Shield. With Greatsword, you use Greatsword as the main at range and execute with Sword Shield. Here, Scepter Pistol is the main weapon set, and Sword Shield is a defensive one. So you use Sword Shield to disrupt resing, to do stuff like that, but Scepter Pistol is used to actually kill opponents. Here I made a mistake. I should use Chrono Phantasma trait and F3 Shatter, so my Avengers attacked again. Still learning. So they got the Scrapper up. I pursue, and you can see the virtue of Illusion line here. Scepter puts clones on your opponents so you can shatter. Shatter means alacrity. Persistence of Memory gives you better cooldowns on Shield Phantasm and the Damaging Phantasm, means more defenses. Scepter 2 is a decent block, and combination of something like Duelist and Scepter 3 means opponents are not very fortunate if you catch them. As you can see, the Scepter damage is not much lower than the sword damage, and it's far greater than Greatsword or Staff damage in case you are trying to pursue an opponent. Of course I mean sustain, not burst. Note how much the playstyles between those weapons differ. If I play Greatsword like Staff, I am dead. If I play Scepter like Greatsword, I'm useless. No idea which one is the best, by the way. I think it depends on you. So, thank you very much for watching. Uxal is out after a long break. May the world versus world be with you. And Squirrels.